My name is Clara Benson. I'm 63 years old, and I woke up to an empty house. Not empty in the way a house feels when your children move out and start their own lives. Not empty in the quiet, bittersweet way that comes with watching someone you love spread their wings and fly. No. This was a different kind of empty. This was the kind of empty that steals your breath, that makes your knees buckle, that turns your stomach inside out and leaves you gasping for air in the middle of what used to be your living room. Every chair was gone. Every painting I'd hung with trembling hands after my husband died. Every lamp, every cushion, every curtain that had filtered the morning light just the way I liked it. The dining table where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays, where I'd served Sunday dinners for 30 years, gone. The antique bookshelf my mother left me, the one I'd lovingly restored board by board, vanished. Even the mirrors were stripped from the walls, leaving behind pale rectangles on the paint like ghosts of what used to be. My daughter and her husband had sold everything. Everything. They'd stripped my home down to the bare walls and flown to Texas with the money in their pockets. And she left me a note, just a crumpled piece of paper on the kitchen counter, that said she deserved a vacation. She deserved it. As if I deserved this. As if 20 years of sacrifice and love and opening my door to her when she had nowhere else to go somehow entitled her to rob me blind while I slept under my own roof. If you believe that no one deserves peace built on someone else's pain, if you believe that kindness shouldn't be mistaken for weakness, if you've ever trusted someone with your whole heart only to have them crush it in their hands, please, like this video. Subscribe to this channel. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because I need to know I'm not alone in this. I need to know that somewhere out there, someone understands what it feels like to be betrayed by the person you die for. Let me tell you something about myself, because I think it matters. I think you need to understand who I was before all of this happened, before my daughter decided that my life's work was worth less than a 2-week vacation in Austin. I wasn't born rich. I didn't inherit wealth or marry into it, though God knows I worked hard enough to earn it. Everything I owned, every single thing that was taken from me, came from decades of sacrifice. I'm talking about late nights when my eyes burned from exhaustion but I kept going because the bills wouldn't pay themselves. I'm talking about early mornings when I dragged myself out of bed before dawn because someone had to keep the lights on, someone had to put food on the table, someone had to be the adult in the room. I was 19 when I married Jackie. 19 years old, fresh out of high school, so young and so naive that I thought love was enough to build a life on. And you know what? For a while, it was. Jackie was a good man, not perfect, but good. He worked construction, came home every evening covered in dust and sweat, and he never once complained. We didn't have much in those early years. We lived in a tiny apartment with paper-thin walls and a radiator that clanked all night long. But we were happy. We were building something together, brick by brick, paycheck by paycheck. When Lily was born, everything changed. Suddenly, we weren't just two kids playing house anymore. We were parents. We had this tiny, perfect human being depending on us for everything, and the weight of that responsibility hit me like a freight train. Jackie picked up extra shifts. I went back to work 3 weeks after giving birth because we couldn't afford for me to stay home any longer. My mother watched Lily during the day, and I'd rush home during my lunch break just to hold her, just to feel her little heartbeat against my chest and remind myself why I was doing all of this. We saved. God, how we saved. Every spare dollar went into an envelope in the back of our closet, labeled House Fund in Jackie's careful handwriting. We cut coupons. We bought second-hand clothes. We ate pasta 5 nights a week because it was cheap and filling. And slowly, so slowly it felt like watching grass grow, that envelope got thicker. It took us 7 years to save enough for a down payment. 7 years of sacrifice and discipline and saying no to things we wanted because we were focused on what we needed. And when we finally walked into our house for the first time as homeowners, When Jackie carried me over that threshold with Lily giggling in his arms, I cried. I stood in the middle of that empty living room and I cried because we'd done it. We'd actually done it. That house became everything to me. It wasn't just four walls and a roof. It was proof that hard work mattered, that sacrifice meant something, that two people with nothing but determination and love could build a life worth living. Every room told a story. The kitchen, where I'd spent countless hours teaching Lily how to bake cookies and fold dumplings the way my mother taught me. The backyard, where Jackie built a swing set with his own hands, staying up late into the night to sand every edge smooth so our daughter wouldn't get splinters. The master bedroom, where we'd whisper our dreams to each other in the dark, planning for a future we thought we'd grow old and together. But life doesn't care about your plans. Jackie died when I was 41 years old. A brief illness, sudden and merciless, in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. One moment he was laughing at something on TV, and the next moment he was gone. Just like that. No warning. No chance to say goodbye. No final conversation where I could tell him one more time that he was the best man I'd ever known, that loving him was the easiest thing I'd ever done, that I'd do it all over again in a heartbeat. The grief nearly killed me. There were days when I couldn't get out of bed, when the weight of his absence pressed down on my chest so hard I couldn't breathe. There were nights when I'd wake up reaching for him, only to find cold, empty sheets beside me. And there was Lily, 13 years old and trying to be brave, trying to hold herself together while I fell apart. I had a choice to make. I could drown in that grief, let it pull me under and never come back up. Or I could honor Jackie's memory by being the woman he'd believed I was, by being the mother our daughter needed me to be. So I got up. I went back to work. I learned how to fix the leaky faucet myself instead of calling a plumber. I taught myself how to mow the lawn and change the oil in the car and unclog the gutters. I became the kind of woman who could do it all alone, because that's what survival looked like for me. And I kept that house. God, I fought to keep that house. The mortgage payments felt impossible on a single income, but I made it work. I picked up overtime whenever I could. I took on side jobs, cleaning houses on weekends, doing bookkeeping for local businesses, anything that would bring in extra money. There were months when I had to choose between groceries and the electric bill, months when I fed Lily first and told her I'd already eaten when I hadn't. But we kept the house. We kept the home Jackie had worked so hard to give us. Over the years, I poured everything into that place. Every raise I got, every bonus, every tax refund, it all went back into improving our home. I replaced the worn carpets with hardwood floors, refinishing them myself over long weekends with YouTube videos as my guide. I renovated the kitchen, tiling the backsplash one square at a time because I couldn't afford to hire someone else to do it. I planted a garden in the backyard, roses and hydrangeas and tomatoes that I'd tend to every evening after work, my hands deep in the soil, talking to Jackie like he was still there beside me. That house became more than just a place to live. It became my sanctuary. It was where I healed from losing my husband. It was where I raised my daughter into the woman I thought she'd become. It was where I built a life for myself as a widow, as a single mother, as a woman who refused to be broken by tragedy. Every piece of furniture I bought, every picture I hung on the walls, every lamp and rug and decorative bowl, they were all chosen with care, all part of the story I was writing for myself. Lily used to call it her safe place. She'd bring friends over after school and they'd sprawl across the living room couch, eating snacks and laughing about whatever teenage girls laugh about. She'd study at the dining room table while I cooked dinner, asking me to quiz her on vocabulary words or help her work through a difficult math problem. When she went through her first heartbreak at 16, she cried in my arms on that same couch, and I held her and told her that she was going to be okay, that the pain wouldn't last forever, that she was stronger than she knew. I thought I was teaching her about resilience. About hard work. About what it means to build something meaningful with your own two hands. I thought I was showing her that women don't need to be rescued, that we can survive anything if we're willing to fight for it. Apparently, I taught her something else entirely. 6 months ago, Lily came home. She's 34 now, married to a man named Aaron who I never quite warmed to but tried to love because he was my daughter's choice. They'd been living in California, chasing dreams that never quite materialized, jumping from one failed business venture to another, always just one big break away from success. At least, that's what Lily told me every time I called to check in. When she called me 6 months ago, her voice was small and tired in a way that broke my heart. "Mom," she said, "Aaron and we're having some trouble. We lost our apartment. We need somewhere to stay, just temporarily, just until we get back on our feet. Can we come home? Can she come home?" As if there was ever a question. As if I'd ever say no to my daughter when she needed me. As if 20 years of missing her presence in my house hadn't left a lily-shaped hole in my heart that nothing could fill. "Of course," I told her. "Of course you can come home. Stay as long as you need to." I prepared the guest room for them, washing the sheets and fluffing the pillows and putting fresh flowers on the nightstand. I stocked the refrigerator with their favorite foods. I cleared space in the closets and the bathroom cabinets. I did everything I could think of to make them feel welcome, to make them feel loved, to show my daughter that no matter how old she got or how far she traveled, she would always have a home with me. They arrived on a Tuesday evening in March. Lily hugged me tight at the door, and for a moment, it felt like she was 13 again, seeking comfort after a bad day at school. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered into my shoulder. "We won't be here long. Just until Aaron finds work and we can save up for our own place again." "Take your time," I told her, meaning it. "There's no rush. This is your home too." Looking back now, I can see all the signs I missed. Or maybe I didn't miss them. Maybe I saw them and chose to ignore them, chose to explain them away, chose to believe that my daughter couldn't, do what she eventually did. It started small. Little things that I told myself didn't matter, that I convinced myself were normal adjustments when adult children move back home. Lily started rearranging the living room, moving furniture around to make better use of the space. She replaced my throw pillows with ones she'd brought from California, brighter colors that clashed with everything else but that she insisted were more modern. Aaron started using my tools without asking, leaving them scattered in the garage instead of putting them back where they belonged. "We're just trying to contribute," Lily said when I gently suggested they check with me before making changes. "We live here too now, Mom. We should all feel comfortable." And I wanted her to feel comfortable. Of course I did. So I swallowed my irritation when she rearranged my kitchen cabinets, putting things in places that made no sense to me but that she claimed were more efficient. I bit my tongue when Aaron started parking in my usual spot in the driveway, forcing me to park on the street in front of my own house. I said nothing when they started having friends over without mentioning it to me first, when my quiet evenings alone turned into impromptu dinner parties that I wasn't prepared for. "Just until we get back on our feet," Lily kept saying. But weeks turned into months, and neither of them seemed to be looking very hard for those feet to stand on. Aaron would sleep until noon, then spend the afternoon playing video games in the guest room. Lily took a part-time job at a coffee shop, but she'd come home exhausted, as if 4 hours of work had drained every ounce of energy from her body. I tried to be understanding. I tried to remember how hard it had been for me after Jackie died, how overwhelming everything felt, how some days just getting out of bed was an accomplishment. I tried to give them grace and space and time to heal from whatever disappointments had brought them back to my doorstep. But my house stopped feeling like mine. I'd come home from work, still working at 63 because retirement isn't an option when you've spent decades supporting yourself alone, and find them sprawled across my living room, their stuff everywhere, dishes piled in the sink, laundry draped over my furniture. They'd eaten the groceries I'd bought for the week, leaving me with empty cupboards and no dinner options. They'd used up all the hot water before I could shower. They'd invited people over without asking, treating my home like their personal entertainment venue. "Mom, don't be so uptight," Lily said when I asked them to please clean up after themselves. "We're family. We share everything." But it didn't feel like sharing. It felt like taking. It felt like my life, my space, my peace was being consumed by two people who saw my generosity as an invitation to take whatever they wanted. I started noticing other things too. Whispered conversations that stopped abruptly when I walked into a room. Lily and Aaron huddled over Aaron's laptop, quickly closing it when I came near. Phone calls taken outside or in their bedroom, voices low and secretive. They'd make eye contact across the table during dinner, some kind of silent communication passing between them that excluded me entirely. Something was happening. Something they didn't want me to know about. But every time I asked if everything was okay, Lily would smile that bright, fake smile and tell me everything was fine, just fine, better than fine actually. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that of course they needed privacy, that married couples have their own concerns and conversations that don't involve their parents. I told myself to stop being so suspicious of my own daughter, to trust that the little girl I'd raised to know right from wrong wouldn't lie to my face while eating my food and sleeping under my roof. God, I was so stupid. So blind. So desperate to believe that my daughter was still the person I thought she was that I ignored every red flag waving right in front of my face. It was a Friday morning when everything came crashing down. I remember that detail so clearly, because Fridays used to be my favorite day of the week. The promise of a weekend ahead, 2 days to rest and putter around the house and tend to my garden. I'd wake up early, make myself a good breakfast, sit in my favorite chair by the window and watch the sun rise over the neighborhood while I sipped my coffee. Except on this particular Friday, I woke up and something felt wrong immediately. The house was too quiet. Not the peaceful quiet of a sleeping household, but an empty, echoing quiet that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I got out of bed and walked into the hallway. Lily's door was open, the guest room empty. Maybe they'd gone out early for breakfast, I thought. Maybe they'd finally decided to be productive and start their day before noon. But then I walked into the living room and my heart stopped. It was empty. Completely, utterly empty. The couch was gone. The coffee table, the armchair, the side tables with their lamps, gone. The TV that had sat on the entertainment center itself, vanished. The rug I'd saved for months to buy, the one that had finally pulled the whole room together, rolled up and removed. Even the curtains had been taken down, leaving the windows bare and exposed. I stood there, frozen, my brain unable to process what my eyes were seeing. This had to be a mistake. This had to be some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe they'd decided to surprise me by redecorating. Maybe they'd hired movers to take everything away for cleaning or repair. But even as I tried to convince myself of these possibilities, I knew. Deep down, in the part of me that had been whispering warnings for weeks, I knew exactly what had happened. I ran through the house like a madwoman, throwing open doors, checking every room. The dining room, table, chairs, china cabinet, all gone. My bedroom, the dresser my mother had given me, the antique mirror, the reading lamp Jackie had bought me for our 15th anniversary, all missing. The hallway walls were bare, the family photos removed, nails still sticking out of the wall like tiny accusations. Even the kitchen hadn't been spared. My KitchenAid mixer, the one I'd finally splurged on after years of hand mixing everything, was gone. The coffee maker, the toaster, the set of copper pots I'd collected piece by piece, vanished. They'd taken the artwork off the walls, the decorative bowls from the counters, even the magnetic knife holder with my good knives. I ran from room to room, my breath coming in short, painful gasps, my hands shaking so badly I could barely open doors. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. My daughter wouldn't do this to me. She couldn't. Not my Lily. Not the baby I'd raised, the child I'd sacrificed everything for, the daughter I'd loved with every fiber of my being for 34 years. But she had. They had. And the evidence was all around me in the form of empty rooms and blank walls and the echoing silence of a home that had been gutted. I found the note in the kitchen, placed carefully on the counter where they knew I'd see it. Just a single piece of paper with a few lines scrawled in Lily's handwriting, as casual as a grocery list, as thoughtless as a reminder to take out the trash. Mom, we sold a few things. Don't worry, they weren't that important. We needed the money for a fresh start. We're in Texas. Aaron has a job opportunity there. I needed this vacation, this change. I deserve it. I'll call you when we're settled. L. I read those words over and over, trying to make them mean something different than what they clearly said. Trying to find some hidden message, some explanation that would make this okay, that would turn this nightmare into a misunderstanding. But there was no other interpretation. No hidden meaning. Just the plain, brutal truth: my daughter had sold my belongings, my memories, my life's work, the physical manifestations of decades of love and loss and survival, and used the money to fund a vacation to Texas. She deserved it. I stood there in my empty kitchen, holding that note in my trembling hands, and something inside me broke. But it wasn't the kind of breaking you might expect. I didn't collapse to the floor in tears. I didn't scream or throw things or call her phone over and over begging her to explain. I didn't run to the neighbors for comfort or call the police to report a theft. I stood there in the silence of my violated home, and I felt something shift inside me. The grief and shock and betrayal were there, yes, sharp and painful and overwhelming. But underneath all of that, growing stronger with every breath I took, was something else. Clarity. I walked slowly through my empty house, really looking at what they'd done. They hadn't just taken a few things to sell for gas money. This wasn't a desperate act by two people down on their luck. This was calculated. Planned. Systematic. They'd rented a truck, probably more than one. They'd spent hours, maybe days, carefully removing everything of value. They'd looked at every item in my home and asked themselves not, does Mom need this, but how much can we get for it? The antique bookshelf my mother left me? Probably sold to some vintage dealer for a fraction of its sentimental value. The dining table where I'd served Sunday dinners for 30 years? Listed on some online marketplace, advertised as authentic farmhouse style. My mother's china, the set she'd saved her whole life to complete. Boxed up and sold to strangers who'd never known that every piece represented a Christmas or birthday when she'd gotten one step closer to her dream. They'd taken the TV, the electronics, and the furniture. But they'd also taken the photo albums. The scrapbooks I'd meticulously maintained, filled with pictures of Lily's childhood, of Jackie, of our life together. They'd taken the jewelry box on my dresser, the one containing not expensive pieces but treasured ones, my wedding ring, the necklace Jackie gave me when Lily was born, and my mother's pearls. They'd taken the paintings I'd collected over the years, some from local artists, others from my travels, each one chosen because it spoke to me in some way. And they'd done it all while I slept. While I was in my bed, in the room next to theirs, trusting them completely, they were loading up trucks with my life. That morning, standing in the hollow shell of what used to be my sanctuary, I didn't cry. I felt like I should cry, like tears were the appropriate response to this level of betrayal. But my eyes stayed dry, my breathing steady. Because somewhere in the midst of that shock and pain, a decision was taking shape. I wasn't going to call the police. What would I tell them? That my daughter, who legally lived here, who had access to everything in the house, had taken things without my permission. They'd call it a civil matter, tell me to work it out in family court, send me on my way. And even if they did take it seriously, even if they charged Lily with theft, what then? She'd go to jail? My daughter, arrested and prosecuted? No. No matter what she'd done to me, I couldn't do that to her. I wasn't going to call her and beg for an explanation either. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of hearing my voice break, of knowing how deeply she'd wounded me. I wasn't going to plead with her to bring things back, to apologize, to somehow undo what she'd done. Because I knew with absolute certainty, that she wouldn't care. If she cared, she wouldn't have done this in the first place. No. I was going to prepare. I was going to think. I was going to plan my own kind of justice. I sat down in the middle of my empty living room floor, right where my couch used to be, and I smiled. Not a happy smile, not the kind of smile that reaches your eyes and warms your heart. This was something different. Something cold and sharp and focused. This was the smile of a woman who'd spent 63 years being kind, being generous, being the person everyone could count on, and who had finally realized that kindness without boundaries isn't a virtue. It's a weakness that people will exploit. I thought about Jackie. About how he'd always told me I was too soft, too willing to give people the benefit of the doubt. Clara, he'd say, not everyone has a good heart like yours. Some people will take and take and take until there's nothing left of you. I'd always brushed off his warnings, insisted that he was too cynical, that most people were basically good if you gave them a chance. Turns out Jackie was right. And it had taken our own daughter proving it to me. I spent that entire day sitting in the empty rooms of my house, thinking. Planning. The shock was wearing off, replaced by a cold, crystalline anger that sharpened my thoughts and steadied my hands. I wasn't going to be a victim in this story. I wasn't going to be the sad old woman who got robbed by her own child and just accepted it with tears and resignation. I was going to be strategic. First, I went to the bank. I emptied our joint checking account, the one I'd set up years ago thinking that if something happened to me, Lily would be able to access funds for my funeral, for emergencies. The account that she'd apparently been planning to raid all along but hadn't gotten to yet. Every penny went into a new account in my name only. Then I went to my lawyer. Good old Robert Henderson, who'd handled Jackie's estate and helped me with various legal matters over the years. I walked into his office without an appointment, and something in my face must have alarmed him because he cleared his schedule immediately. Clara, he said, what's wrong? And I told him. Every detail. The way they'd moved in 6 months ago. The way they'd slowly taken over my space, my home, my life. The way I'd woken up to an empty house and a note that showed less remorse than you'd give a stranger. I showed him the note, my hand steady now, my voice calm. I need to know my options, I said. Legal options. I need to protect what's left. Robert was quiet for a long moment, reading the note, his expression growing darker. Then he looked up at me with something like admiration in his eyes. Okay, he said. Let's make sure this never happens again. We spent hours in his office that day. He pulled up property records, financial documents, every piece of paper that connected me to Lily. We went through everything with a fine-toothed comb. The house was in my name only, Jackie and I had set it up that way years ago for estate planning purposes. But Lily was listed as the beneficiary, set to inherit everything when I died. Change it, I said. Remove her completely. Robert hesitated. Clara, are you sure? This is a big decision. Maybe you should take some time to. I'm sure. We changed my will. Lily was removed as beneficiary. Everything I owned would now go to various charities, cancer research in Jackie's name, women's shelters, educational funds. Organizations that helped people who actually needed it, who didn't steal from their own mothers to fund a vacation. We also drew up a formal eviction notice. Because even though Lily was in Texas now, even though she'd clearly decided she didn't need her childhood home anymore, I wanted it in writing. I wanted a legal document that said she was not welcome here, that she had no claim to this house or anything in it, that if she ever tried to come back and take more, she'd be prosecuted for trespassing and theft. She's going to be angry, Robert warned me. Good, I said. Let her be angry. I've been accommodating for 63 years. I think I'm entitled to a little anger of my own. Next, I changed the locks. All of them. Front door, back door, garage, even the side gate to the backyard. I called a locksmith and stood there watching as he removed every lock that Lily's key could open and replaced them with new ones. It felt symbolic, like I was finally taking back control of my own space. I went through my files and found receipts, photos, documentation of everything that had been in my house. Insurance records showing what I'd owned. Photos from holidays and birthday parties where you could see the furniture, the artwork, the items that were now gone. I made copies of everything, organized it all into neat folders, built a case as solid as any prosecutor's evidence file. Because part of me knew, part of me hoped, that one day I'd need it. I spent the next 3 weeks in a kind of manic productivity. I couldn't replace most of what they'd taken, not financially. Do you have any idea how much furniture costs? How much it takes to refurnish an entire house? I'd spent decades accumulating those things, buying them piece by piece as I could afford them. I couldn't just go out and buy it all back. But I could make my house feel like mine again. I went to thrift stores and estate sales. I bought mismatched furniture, nothing fancy but functional. A couch from Goodwill that was ugly as sin but comfortable. A dining table from a neighbor who was downsizing. I hung new curtains, cheap ones from discount stores, but they covered the windows and gave me back my privacy. I put new photos in frames, printed from digital copies I still had, pictures of Jackie, of my parents, of Lily as a child before she became whatever she'd turned into. I made my house into a home again. A different home, maybe. One with gaps where precious things used to be, with cheap replacements for irreplaceable losses. But it was mine. Every piece I brought in, I chose. Every arrangement, every decision, was mine and mine alone. And I waited. I knew they'd come back. What the hell? I heard Aaron say, his voice carrying through the closed door. They knocked. Tentatively at first, then more insistently. Like they couldn't understand why their keys didn't work, why the door to what they clearly still considered their home wouldn't open for them. I waited. Let them knock. Let them wonder. Let them experience just a fraction of the confusion and helplessness I'd felt waking up to an empty house. When I finally opened the door, the expression on their faces was almost worth everything they'd put me through. Shock. Complete, absolute shock. Mom, Lily said, her voice uncertain. What? What happened? Our keys don't work. I looked at her. Really looked at her. Trying to find some trace of the little girl I'd raised, the daughter I'd loved unconditionally, the child who used to crawl into my lap and tell me I was the best mommy in the whole world. But all I saw was a stranger. A beautiful, tan, well-dressed stranger who'd stolen from me and felt entitled to come back for more. Nothing happened, I said, my voice calm and even. Just a little home renovation. I removed everything that didn't belong here anymore. Aaron stepped forward, his jaw tight. Mrs. Benson, there's clearly been some kind of misunderstanding. This is not your house, I interrupted, still looking at Lily. Not your home. Not your anything. Lily's face went pale under that Texas tan. Mom, what are you talking about? Can we please come inside and discuss this? No. Just that one word, but it felt powerful. Felt right. The first boundary I'd set with my daughter in 6 months, maybe in her entire life. I found your note, I continued, my voice steady despite the rage simmering underneath. The one where you told me you'd sold a few things that weren't important. Would you like to know what you sold, Lily? Would you like me to list every single item you stripped from this house while I was sleeping? She had the grace to look uncomfortable, at least. Her eyes dropped to the ground, unable to meet mine. You sold the bookshelf my mother left me. The one I'd promised to pass down to you someday, because it had been in our family for 3 generations. You sold the dining table where we ate dinner together for 17 years, where I helped you with your homework every night, where we celebrated every birthday and holiday. You sold Jackie's favorite chair, the one I could never bring myself to get rid of because sometimes I'd still sit in it just to feel close to him. Mom, Lily tried to interrupt, but I wasn't finished. You sold my mother's china. The jewelry that meant something to me, not because it was valuable but because of who gave it to me and when. You sold the photo albums, Lily. You took pictures of your own childhood, of your father, of our family, and you sold them to strangers like they were worthless. Do you understand that? You sold our memories. Tears were streaming down Lily's face now, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no urge to comfort her. Those tears were for herself, not for me. She was crying because she'd been caught, because there were consequences, not because she actually felt remorse for what she'd done. And then you left me a note, I continued, pulling the crumpled paper out of my pocket where I'd been carrying it for 3 weeks like evidence at a crime scene. A note where you told me those things weren't important. When you told me you deserved this vacation you'd stolen from me. We were desperate. Aaron burst out. We didn't have any options. We needed money and instead of getting jobs, instead of working hard like I've done my entire life, instead of asking me for help like a family is supposed to do, you decided to steal from a 63-year-old woman who's done nothing but love and support you. I turned my attention to him fully for the first time. You've been living in my house rent-free for 6 months. Eating my food, using my utilities, sleeping under my roof. I never asked you for a dime. I never made you feel unwelcome. All I wanted was some respect, some consideration, some basic human decency. And this is what you did. Aaron's face flushed red. Look, we were going to pay you back. With what? I asked. You just spent 3 weeks in Texas living it up on my dime. How much did you blow through, Aaron? How many fancy restaurants? How many hotels? How many shopping sprees to buy those new clothes you're wearing right now? Lily finally found her voice. We were going to send you money once Aaron's new job started. Stop lying to me. The words came out sharper than I'd intended, cracking through the air like a whip. Just stop. I'm done listening to your lies and your excuses and your promises that mean nothing. You want to know what I did while you were in Texas having the vacation you deserved? I pulled out my phone and started reading from the notes I'd made. I went to the bank and removed your name from every account. I went to my lawyer and changed my will. You're no longer my beneficiary, Lily. Everything I own will go to charity when I die. I changed all the locks on this house. I filed a formal eviction notice with the county. I documented every single thing you stole from me, with photos and receipts and sworn statements. And I contacted the police to file a report, though I told them I'd decide later whether to press charges. That last part was a lie. I hadn't actually contacted the police, but they didn't need to know that. I wanted them to feel the fear, the uncertainty, the vulnerability that I'd felt. Lily's face had gone from pale to gray. You wouldn't press charges against your own daughter. Wouldn't I? I met her eyes, let her see the cold determination in mine. You didn't hesitate to rob your own mother. Why should I hesitate to hold you accountable? Because I'm your daughter. She was crying openly now, mascara running down her cheeks. Because you love me. Because families are supposed to forgive each other. You're right, I said softly. Families are supposed to forgive each other. But family is also supposed to love each other. Respect each other. Not steal from each other and then run off to Texas like it's no big deal. You broke the family bond, Lily. Not me. You. I could see her trying to formulate a response, trying to find some angle that would make this okay, that would get her back into my good graces and back into my house. She'd always been good at that, even as a child. She'd mess up, do something wrong, and then turn on the charm, those big eyes, that sweet smile, that little girl voice saying "I'm sorry, Mommy," until I melted and forgave her. But I wasn't melting this time. I need you to understand something, I continued, my voice steady and cold. When I woke up to an empty house, when I read your note and realized what you'd done, something broke inside me. Not just my heart, though that shattered into a million pieces. But something else. The part of me that believed you were a good person who'd just made some bad choices. The part of me that kept making excuses for you, kept giving you chance after chance, kept believing that eventually you'd grow up and become the woman I'd raised you to be. I paused, making sure she was listening, really listening. That's gone now. You killed it. And you can't bring it back with tears or apologies or promises to change. You showed me exactly who you are, Lily. And I finally believe you. So what? Aaron said, his voice hard with anger now that he realized crying wasn't going to work. You're just going to cut her off completely? Your own daughter? What kind of mother does that? The kind who finally learned that being a good mother doesn't mean letting your child walk all over you, I shot back. The kind who realizes that real love sometimes means setting boundaries and enforcing consequences. The kind who refuses to enable her daughter's worst impulses just to avoid conflict. I turned back to Lily. I gave you everything. I worked myself to the bone to provide for you after your father died. I sacrificed my own needs, my own happiness, my own future to make sure you had opportunities one never had. I put you through college, did you forget that? I took out loans I'm still paying off so you could get your degree. I supported your dreams, cheered you on, believed in you even when you gave me every reason not to. I know, Lily started, but I cut her off. No, you don't know. You have no idea what it cost me to raise you alone. The nights I couldn't sleep because I was worried about making the mortgage payment. The times I went hungry so you could eat. The dreams I gave up, the life I could have had if I hadn't been so focused on being the perfect mother to an increasingly ungrateful daughter. The words were pouring out now, years of frustration and hurt and disappointment finally finding their voice. I watched you make mistake after mistake in your 20s. Bad boyfriends, terrible jobs you'd quit after a month, harebrained business ideas that went nowhere. And every time, I was there to catch you. I'd send money, offer advice, let you move back home. I'd tell myself you were just finding your way, that everyone struggles in their 20s, that eventually you'd figure it out. Then you married Aaron. I looked at him, not even trying to hide my contempt. And I tried to be happy for you. I tried to like him because you loved him. I paid for half of your wedding, did you forget that too? $10,000 I didn't have, money I had to pull from my retirement savings, because you wanted your perfect day. Lily's tears had stopped now. She was just staring at me with a mixture of shock and something that might have been shame. And then you both moved to California to chase another dream. Fine. I supported that too. I called regularly, sent care packages, wired money when you said you were just a little short on rent. I did what mothers do, I helped. I loved you. I believed in you. I took a breath, steadying myself. 6 months ago, when you called and said you needed a place to stay, I didn't hesitate. I didn't ask questions. I didn't set conditions. I just said yes, because that's what I've always done. And you knew that, didn't you? You knew I'd never say no. You knew you could count on good old Mom to open her door and her home and ask for nothing in return. We didn't mean for it to go this far, Lily tried again. Yes, you did. The anger finally broke through, hot and sharp. You absolutely did. This wasn't some impulsive decision. You didn't wake up one morning and accidentally sell all my furniture. You planned this. You rented a truck. You spent hours loading everything up. You carefully chose what to take and what to leave. You wrote me a note, like you were going on a weekend trip instead of stealing my entire life. I pulled out my phone and showed them photos I'd taken of the empty rooms. Look at this. Look at what you did. These aren't just empty rooms, Lily. This is my home. This is the place I built from nothing after your father died. This is where I healed and grew and learned to be strong. And you stripped it bare like I was already dead and you were liquidating my estate. Aaron tried to step forward, his expression hardening. Look, Mrs. Benson, I think we all need to calm down and discuss this like adults. Get off my property. My voice was quiet but iron-hard. Excuse me? You heard me. Get off my property. Both of you. Right now. Mom, please. Lily reached out toward me, but I stepped back. Don't touch me. Don't mom me. You lost the right to call me that when you decided I was worth more to you as a source of income than as a human being. That's not fair. Lily's voice rose, anger replacing her tears. We were desperate. We didn't have any choice. There's always a choice. I was done listening to excuses. You could have gotten jobs, real jobs, not part-time coffee shop work that you showed up to whenever you felt like it. You could have asked me for a loan. You could have sold your own things instead of mine. You could have done literally anything other than what you did. We needed a fresh start, Aaron said, his jaw clenched. We needed to get out from under all the pressure, all the expectations. So you decided to fund your fresh start by destroying mine? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Do you hear how insane that sounds? You wanted a new beginning, so you ended the life I'd built for 63 years? I looked at their suitcases, still sitting on my porch where they'd dropped them when they realized their keys didn't work. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice calm again, controlled. You're going to pick up those suitcases. You're going to get in whatever car you drove here in. And you're going to leave. If you come back, I'll call the police and have you arrested for trespassing. If you try to contact me, I'll get a restraining order. If you think you can somehow guilt me or manipulate me into changing my mind, let me save you the trouble, you can't. This is over. We're over. You're really going to do this? Lily's voice was small now, disbelieving. You're really going to throw away 34 years because of some furniture? Some furniture? I felt my control slipping again. Some furniture? Lily, you took my mother's things. You took the last pieces I had of Jackie. You took photo albums filled with memories that can never be replaced. You took my sense of safety in my own home. You took my ability to trust my own daughter. You took everything that made this house a home and you sold it for vacation money. I was breathing hard now, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. But you know what the worst part is? It's not even what you took. It's how you did it. While I was sleeping. While I was in this house, vulnerable and trusting, you were loading up trucks with my life. You could have talked to me. You could have asked. You could have shown me even a shred of respect. But you didn't. You treated me like a mark, like a victim, like someone whose feelings and rights didn't matter at all. I'm sorry, Lily whispered. I'm so sorry, Mom. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry there are consequences. But you're not sorry for what you did. If you were really sorry, you would have come back from Texas with my things. You would have used that money to replace what you'd stolen. You would have fallen on your knees and begged for my forgiveness before you ever tried to use those keys in my door. I could see the realization dawning on her face, the understanding that I was serious, that this wasn't a dramatic moment that would end with a tearful reconciliation. This was real. This was final. "But I'm your daughter," she said again, like it was a magic spell that could undo everything. "And I was your mother," I replied. Was. Past tense. Because the woman who raised you, who loved you unconditionally, who would have done anything for you, you killed her. You looked at everything she'd built and you decided it was worth more in pieces than whole. So that's what you get now. The pieces. Not the relationship. Not love. Not the mother who would have died for you. You sold all of that along with everything else. I could feel the tears finally coming, hot and bitter behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of them. They didn't get to see me break. "Mom," Lily tried one more time. "My name is Clara," I said coldly. "Mrs. Benson to you. And if I ever see you on my property again, I'll have you arrested." "That's not a threat. That's a promise." I looked at Aaron, who'd been quiet for the last few minutes, his face red with suppressed anger. "And you? You came into my home as my son-in-law. I tried to love you because you were my daughter's choice. I gave you every benefit of the doubt even when you showed me, day after day, that you were lazy and entitled and more than happy to live off an old woman's generosity. I hope that money was worth it. I hope your vacation was everything you dreamed it would be. Because that's all you're ever getting from me." He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, but apparently thought better of it. Smart man. I was done being polite. "Leave," I said one final time. "And don't come back." I stepped back into my house and closed the door in their faces. Locked it. Every bolt, every chain, every barrier between them and me clicked into place with a satisfying finality. I stood there with my back against the door, listening to them on the other side. Lily was crying again, saying my name, "Mom, please, Mom," over and over like a child who'd been punished for something she didn't understand. Aaron was trying to calm her down, his voice low and urgent, probably already planning their next move, their next attempt to manipulate me. But I didn't open the door. I didn't soften. I just stood there until I heard them finally pick up their suitcases and walk away. Heard their car door slam. I heard the engine start and the sound of them driving off down the street. Only then did I let myself slide down to the floor, my back still against the door, and let the tears come. I cried for the daughter I'd raised, the one who'd been kind and thoughtful and loving. I cried for the little girl who used to make me Mother's Day cards and tell me I was her hero. I cried for the young woman who'd called me from college homesick and lonely, who'd needed her mom's voice to make things okay. I cried for all the versions of Lily who'd existed before this one, before greed and entitlement had turned her into someone I didn't recognize. And I cried for myself. For the mother who'd failed somehow, who'd apparently raised a daughter capable of such callousness. For the widow who'd worked so hard to build a life after loss, only to have it torn apart by the person she'd loved most. For the woman who'd spent 63 years believing the best in people, only to learn the hardest way possible that sometimes people don't deserve that faith. I don't know how long I sat there on the floor of my empty hallway. Long enough for the sun to set completely, for the house to fill with shadows, for my tears to run dry and leave me hollow and exhausted. Eventually, I got up. Washed my face. Made myself a cup of tea. Sat in my thrift store chair by the window and looked out at the street where my daughter had driven away. And you know what? Despite everything, despite the pain and the betrayal and the loss, I felt something unexpected. Relief. For 6 months, I'd been walking on eggshells in my own home. Accommodating someone else's schedule, someone else's needs, someone else's expectations. Watching helplessly as my space and my peace were slowly eroded. feeling like a guest in the house I'd worked decades to afford. But now? Now it was mine again. Truly, completely mine. Yes, it was emptier than it had been. Yes, I'd lost things I could never replace. But what I'd gained was something more valuable than furniture or photos or even family heirlooms. I'd gained myself back. The woman who'd stood on that porch and set boundaries. The woman who'd looked her daughter in the eye and said no more. The woman who'd chosen self-respect over unconditional forgiveness. That was who I was now. Not the pushover, not the enabler, not the doormat who'd accept any treatment as long as it came from someone she loved. I was Clara Benson. 63 years old. Widow. Survivor. And nobody, not even my own daughter, was going to use me ever again. The next few weeks were hard, I won't lie about that. I'd wake up in the morning and for a split second forget what had happened, forget that Lily was gone, that we were done. Then reality would come crashing back and I'd have to lie there and absorb it all over again. I thought about her constantly. Wondered where she was, what she was doing, whether she ever thought about me or felt any genuine remorse. Part of me kept expecting her to call, to show up at my door with a real apology, with proof that she'd sold the things and wanted to make it right. But my phone stayed silent. No calls. No texts. No emails. Nothing. It was like I'd died, like I'd ceased to exist the moment I'd stopped being useful to her. And that hurt more than anything else. Because it confirmed what I'd known deep down but hadn't wanted to believe, she didn't love me. Maybe she never had. Or maybe she'd loved me once, when she was young and needed me, but that love had died somewhere along the way and been replaced by something else. Entitlement. Resentment. Indifference. I started going to therapy. Yes, at 63 years old, I finally admitted I needed help processing all of this. My therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Martinez, helped me understand something important. This wasn't my fault. I'd spent weeks torturing myself with questions. What had I done wrong? How had I failed as a mother? Where had I gone wrong in raising her? Had I been too soft, too indulgent? Had I given her too much or not enough? Had I somehow taught her that this kind of behavior was acceptable? But Dr. Martinez helped me see that I couldn't take responsibility for Lily's choices. Yes, I'd raised her. Yes, I'd made mistakes, all parents do. But at some point, she'd become an adult with her own moral compass, her own values, her own ability to choose right from wrong. And she'd chosen wrong. That was on her, not me. You showed her love, Dr. Martinez told me in one of our sessions. You showed her sacrifice. You showed her hard work and integrity and resilience. The fact that she didn't internalize those lessons, that she chose a different path, that's not a reflection of your parenting. That's a reflection of who she decided to be. It helped, hearing that. It didn't erase the pain, but it helped me stop blaming myself quite so much. I also started rebuilding my life in other ways. I joined a book club at the local library. Started volunteering at a women's shelter, helping other women who'd been taken advantage of by people they trusted. I adopted a cat from the shelter, a scraggly orange tabby named Marmalade who'd been abandoned by his previous owners. We were quite a pair, the two of us. Both betrayed by the people who were supposed to love us most. Both learning to trust again. Slowly, painfully, I began to heal. The house started to feel like home again, even with its mismatched furniture and its gaps where precious things used to be. I made new memories. Had friends over for dinner. Sat in my garden in the evenings and felt something close to peace. But I never forgot. How could I? Every time I looked at the empty spaces on my walls, every time I opened a drawer that should have contained my mother's jewelry, every time I sat at the cheap dining table instead of the one Jackie had built, I remembered. 3 months after that confrontation on my porch, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer it, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Benson? A man's voice, professional and polite. Yes? This is Detective James Morrison with the Austin Police Department. I'm calling about your daughter, Lily Collins. My heart stopped. Despite everything, despite all the hurt and anger, she was still my daughter. The thought that something might have happened to her made my blood run cold. Is she okay? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She's fine, ma'am. She's currently being detained on charges of fraud and theft. We found your name and number in her belongings as her next of kin. She's asking if you'll post bail. I sat down heavily in my chair, my mind reeling. Fraud and theft? Yes, ma'am. Apparently, she and her husband have been running a scam, selling items they don't own through online marketplaces. When we arrested them, we found a storage unit full of stolen goods. Your daughter gave a statement claiming she has a right to sell family heirlooms, but the items in question belong to several different families, not just yours. So it hadn't been a one-time thing. It hadn't been desperation or a moment of weakness. This was what they did. This was who they were. Professional thieves who targeted people who trusted them. Mrs. Benson, the detective prompted. Will you be posting bail? It's set at $50,000. $50,000. I'd spent my entire life saving money, being responsible, planning for emergencies. I had savings. I could probably scrape together bail if I liquidated some investments, borrowed against my house. No, I said clearly. I won't be posting bail. There was a pause. Ma'am, she's your daughter. I'm aware. My answer is still no. She said to tell you she's sorry. She said she's learned her lesson and she just needs one more chance. One more chance. Always one more chance. One more opportunity to take advantage, to use me, to hurt me and then expect me to forgive and forget. Detective Morrison, I said, my voice steady, my daughter robbed me 3 months ago. She stripped my house bare while I slept and used the money for a vacation. I cut her off, changed my locks, and told her never to contact me again. So no, I will not be posting her bail. I will not be giving her one more chance. She made her choices, and now she gets to live with the consequences. I understand, he said quietly. For what it's worth, ma'am, I'm sorry this happened to you. Thank you, detective. Is there anything else you need from me? If you'd be willing to give a statement about what she did to you, it might help the prosecution's case. I thought about it for a moment. Thought about Lily sitting in a jail cell, facing real consequences for the first time in her life. Part of me wanted to protect her still, wanted to refuse to add to her troubles. But a bigger part of me, the part that had learned self-respect, that had learned boundaries, that had learned that real love sometimes means letting people face the results of their actions, knew what I had to do. Yes, I said. I'll give a statement. I'll testify if you need me to. I have documentation of everything she took, receipts, photos. I'll send it all to you. Thank you, Mrs. Benson. That's very helpful. After I hung up, I sat there for a long time, marmalade purring in my lap, and I waited to feel something. Guilt, maybe. Sadness. Some maternal instinct that would make me regret my decision. But all I felt was that same sense of relief I'd experienced when I'd closed the door on them 3 months ago. I'd made the right choice. For me, for my peace, for my future. Lily had made her bed, and now she'd have to lie in it. I'm telling you this story now because I want you to understand something. I want you to hear me when I say that being a good person, being kind and generous and loving, those are wonderful qualities. The world needs more kindness, more generosity, more love. But kindness without boundaries isn't kindness. It's self-destruction. It's letting people use you up until there's nothing left. It's teaching them that you have no limits, no self-respect, no bottom line that they shouldn't cross. I spent 63 years believing that love meant accepting everything, forgiving everything, giving everything. I thought being a good mother meant never saying no to my child, never setting limits, never prioritizing my own needs over hers. But I was wrong. So wrong. Real love, the kind that's healthy and sustainable and actually good for everyone involved, has boundaries. It has limits. It says I love you, but I also love myself. I'll help you, but not if it means destroying me. I'll support you, but not if you're using that support to hurt me. Sometimes, the people you love the most will teach you what self-respect truly costs. And the cost is high, make no mistake about that. It cost me my relationship with my daughter. It cost me years of memories and family heirlooms and the dream of growing old with my child in my life. It cost me the fantasy I'd held on to of Sunday dinners with grandchildren I'll probably never meet, of a daughter who'd take care of me when I got too old to take care of myself. But you know what it gave me? It gave me peace. It gave me a home that truly feels like mine. It gave me the ability to look at myself in the mirror and respect the woman looking back at me. It gave me freedom from the constant anxiety of waiting for the next crisis, the next demand, the next time I'd have to choose between my own well-being and my daughter's wants. And honestly, I'd make the same choice again. Every single time. Have you ever been betrayed by someone close to you? Someone you trusted completely, someone you would have done anything for, someone who looked at your love and saw only an opportunity? Tell me in the comments. Tell me your story. Because I need you to know something, you're not alone. Wherever you are in this world, whatever betrayal you've faced, you are not alone. There are those of us who've had to make impossible choices. Who've had to choose self-respect over relationships. Who've had to close doors on people we love because leaving them open was slowly killing us. And we're still here. We survived. We're rebuilding. We're learning that we're stronger than we ever imagined we could be. So please, like this video if it resonated with you. Subscribe to this channel so I can keep sharing these stories, these truths that nobody likes to talk about but that so many of us live with every day. And comment below, tell me where you're watching from, tell me your story, tell me I'm not crazy for making the choice I made. Because stories like this, they remind us of something crucial. Dignity is the most valuable thing we own. Not houses or furniture or family heirlooms. Not even relationships, as precious as they are. Our dignity, our self-respect, our sense of worth, those are the things we can't afford to sell. Not for anyone. Not even for the people we love most. I'm Clara Benson. I'm 63 years old. And I woke up to an empty house. But I'm filling it back up now. Not with things, things can be taken, sold, lost. I'm filling it with peace. With self-respect. With the quiet confidence of a woman who finally learned that she mattered. That her feelings mattered. That her home and her memories and her life mattered. And no one, not even my own daughter, can take that away from me ever again. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for letting me share my story with you. And remember, you deserve to be treated with respect. You deserve to have boundaries. You deserve to protect your peace, even if it costs you relationships that you thought you couldn't live without. Because here's what I've learned, you can live without anyone. But you can't live without yourself. Take care of yourself. Protect yourself. Love yourself. And never, ever let anyone convince you that you deserve less than basic human decency. I'm Clara Benson, and this is my story. What's yours?